So we would like to start. May I ask to come on the stage the panelists and moderator for session 2, cybersecurity, impact and outlook for automotive systems. I guess Lisa Franklin is missing. Oh, no, no, listen. No, 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 listen. Okay.
So I'm inclined. I'm inclined to just have kind of a conversation and ask questions similar to Manuela, but I. Okay. All right. Okay, this is a hot mic, so people are filtering in, so we're going to get started here. We have 6 gentlemen here who are going to share their insights. And I will say, in spite of my best efforts to have a woman on every panel. But anyway, we do have more women, I think, at this event, both on stage and in the audience than we have ever had before. And I didn't know how timely that was, but kind of a kismet. So anyway, I'm going to conduct this in a hybrid fashion. I thought Russ had a nice approach of letting the speakers introduce themselves and share their insights in order and very efficiently. I do have some questions I'd like to ask these panelists and have it as much of a conversational exchange as possible after they've presented their content. However, we seem to have a fairly lively group of people here with questions and who are very inquisitive, so I will leave the floor open immediately after the presentations to see if there are some questions right away. And as I've told the panel, as soon as someone asks a dumb question, I'm going to start asking my own questions. Okay? So without further ado, Chuck, you want to kick us off here? Chuck will introduce himself, and please welcome Chuck Brokish from Green Hills.
Thank you. Yes, I am Chuck Brokish, Director of Automotive Business Development at Green Hills Software. Just a quick foreknote here on the fact that it is Women's Day. I have the luxury of having 3 women in my life, with a wonderful wife and 2 daughters who, I will say, fortunately, are actively involved in science and engineering. So nothing within this industry, and in fact this topic of safety and security, I have to say, not being sexist, but actually recognizing human nature, this industry for safety and security could certainly use the nurturing and protective thought process of women. Green Hills Software has earned its pedigree in the past within military, aerospace, medical, systems in which software failure is not an option. If the software fails, people will die. So software failure is not an option. That said, the software that we do is built on very robust, tested, certified principles and results. I want to talk about what we do within security and safety within vehicles and why is it important. It should not be an important role, it should be the important role within our systems. The software is replicated across millions of cars. When we look at the production of connected cars that are going onto the road, it's phenomenal amount of software that is being enabled within the vehicles. The convergence of electrification within vehicles and electronics taking over mechanical systems, we have so much software in the system that we need to make sure that it's all robust. As we go to the connected car and work our way toward autonomous vehicles, that connectivity becomes even more critical because one system affects all systems. And so we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to secure that vehicle and make it safe. A single exploit, as I mentioned, can be replicated across the entire fleet of vehicles. So mass production within automotive enables mass destruction if done wrong. One of the ways that I like to describe safety and security, people say it's the same thing, people say it's opposite things, they're counter to each other. I like to view safety and security as frankly the bookends of a robust system. Safety is all about making sure a system does exactly what it is supposed to do. Functional safety is well known within the vehicle from a mechanical perspective. On the electronic side and the software side, not as much. There are ASIL ratings, but we don't have as good a testing capabilities as we have within functional safety for mechanical systems. But safety, in general, states what the system must do. If there's an operation that must be done 100 times a second, it doesn't mean occasionally 99 times a second. It means it will be done 100 times a second, has to be guaranteed to be done. On the other hand, when we look at security, security is limiting what the system can do and making sure that it does only what it's supposed to. If we look at exploits that are done within vehicles and exposing vulnerabilities, it's typically taking a system and making it do something that it wasn't necessarily designed to do. So safety requires that we define what must be done. Security is the other bookend in stating the limits of what it should do and mandatory access control and making sure that we secure the system. And you notice I have that bookend coming back around the other end because any system that is not secured is not safe. If you can't ensure that the software, that the functionality, the capabilities of that system aren't secured, then you can't ensure the safety of that vehicle.
Well, that's one of the key differentiators between cars and consumer electronics and phones and things like this.
Absolutely. There's such a reliance on the safety and making sure that we lock up those capabilities and those requirements. So what I'd like to propose is a different look as to how we secure the system. Many people like to look at the system from the connected car, as we talk about here, and look at the portals into a system. We've got Wi-Fi, we've got V2X, we've got cellular, we've got all these connections into the vehicle, and making sure that we lock out those peripherals that are coming into the vehicle and those connections. So we look at the entry points into the system, we establish a perimeter, perhaps put defense in depth by putting additional layers behind that to make sure that we ensure the system. But when that gets subverted, and I say when, because we certainly know that those portals do get subverted, when it gets subverted, we end up leaving the critical components inside of the system exposed. So instead of looking at a system from the outside in, we propose you need to look at the system from the inside out. What are those critical components that are most essential that need to be protected? If we look at cybersecurity in general and how cybersecurity works, the cybersecurity world recognizes that in the end, or maybe in the beginning, the most critical components of the system are the keys. You have to keep keys locked up and make sure that they are secured. Then you build on encryption and authentication and so on from there. But you must recognize your most critical components. So within the system of our software here and our electronics within the vehicles, we need to recognize, especially in the case of autonomous vehicles, the sensors, the control actuators, frankly, the kernel software itself and what is being operated at the very core of the center. So in order to do that, we have to assume that non-critical components will be compromised. Vehicles today that are being produced have between 100 and 150 million lines of code. That is impossible to take every line and ensure the security of every line of code. There's a lot of open source being used in vehicles today, so we need to make sure that we recognize the vulnerabilities that come with that. But we take the critical components at the center, we isolate them, use hardware separation where possible, use a high robustness software separation to make sure that critical and non-critical components are separated, and make sure that the critical components even themselves are separated from each other. Minimize the complexity. Keep it simple. The smaller the complexity, the easier it is to test and prove robustness of the system. And in that robust system, common criteria has defined different levels of evaluated assurance levels. A high robustness specification system, as defined by common criteria, is useful for protecting classified and other high-valued information and against sophisticated threat agents. I don't know about you, but I consider the contents of my car to be high-valued. Hopefully, all of us do, and we treat the construction and the building of these cars accordingly. A medium robustness system, unfortunately, is what's in most of the software that's being shipped in vehicles today. And common criteria defines a medium robustness system as being assumed, non-hostile, and well-managed user community. And it is requiring protection against inadvertent or casual attempts to breach the system's security. In fact, states specifically that is not intended to protect against determined attempts by hostile and well-funded attackers. Now, we certainly know that as we get fleets of cars out here with software, and we can do mass destruction by attacking one piece of software and attacking an entire fleet, there will be hostile attempts to thwart the security. I was thinking about this recently in an example. Anybody out here know what a snapping turtle is? Have you heard of a snapping turtle?
As long as you're not talking about a code name for something.
I'm an avid outdoorsman. I spend a lot of time in the wild and in nature. Snapping turtles are a breed of turtle, but they're a very interesting turtle in that they have a very hard shell. In fact, I've seen them be driven over by a vehicle and not get crushed. They have razor sharp claws, and they have a very strong bite with very sharp beak. And they actually have incredibly fast movement, thus the name snapping. If you ever encounter them, I would encourage not trying to pick them up or pet them. One could argue very much that they have defense in depth. They have multiple layers of defense in order to protect themselves. However, they have a severe vulnerability within their design. If something can come and flip it over, they have a very soft belly. You are right at the core of everything that is important to that animal. I would argue, frankly, that a snapping turtle, is a medium robustness system. It's protected against casual and inadvertent attempts to thwart the security. But anybody who is meaningfully and hostilely trying to take it over will do so. We need to recognize the value within our systems, start from the core of the system, build security outward, making sure that at all times we're protecting those critical components inside.
So, hold on one second. In the context of your snapping turtle analogy, is it possible, do you think, to secure a car, or is there any way to certify that a car is secure, or how would you do that, or how can it be done?
You will never be able to certify every line of code, in my view, within that vehicle. What you can do is isolate the critical components. You take those critical components, put them into smaller pieces of software that are independently certifiable, verifiable, just like systems, anti-lock brake system is in a vehicle, or an airbag system is in a vehicle, or the various subsystems in a vehicle. If it's small enough that you can certify it by proving as ASIL ratings, a ASIL D rating, for example, make sure that you have to cover multi-conditional decision coverage. Every line of code coming in and every direction that piece of code can go. If I've got too large of a piece of code, I cannot do that. But if I keep it small enough, contained enough, I can prove the robustness of that individual entity of software. Take another subsystem, do the same thing. The other benefit of doing that separation is that if I need to update one piece of software, they are in fact separated. So now any modification to the software does not modify the entire system, and I don't have to test the entire system over again.
Okay. Thank you, Chuck. Darren Handley. Please welcome Darren Handley from UNECE and DFT. And please introduce yourself and share your thoughts, Darren. And welcome, Darren.
Good afternoon. That was a great opening speech, so hopefully I can follow it up by telling you some of what we've been doing at UNECE. So just a bit of background about myself. I work at the Department for Transport in our cybersecurity team, which looks across all modes of transport and trying to understand the things we should be worried about and what, from a governmental and policy perspective, we can do to improve the situation and help industry. So one of the things we're really find important is working at a global level, working through the UN. The body for vehicles is UNECE, and helping see what should be done, could be done for cybersecurity. So just a bit more background. We got given a task. I co-chair a task force with Japan, and it started looking in January 2017 about how cybersecurity should be dealt with from a policy perspective, what could be done under a regulatory framework. Our task force, it's not just Japan and UK. Thankfully, we have lots of experts from standards bodies, such as ITU here in our group. We also have manufacturers, a lot of manufacturers, which is really healthy, provides a lot of support, and also other governments from across the globe. So it's a pretty comprehensive task force, and we've been pretty busy as well. So within the mandate, it's obviously trying not to reinvent the wheel, considering what's been done elsewhere, and bringing this together into a paper, which then could be, hopefully, if it's any good, used within the UN to globalize the approach to cybersecurity for automotive. And the timeline is, it got pushed back a little bit. It was originally last December, but we're now looking for hopefully June. 1 year is pretty ambitious to get a paper out on cybersecurity. So this flow diagram, I'm not a master at spreadsheets, but hopefully you can read this. Basically, the process we've identified and almost agreed on is that if you're looking at cybersecurity of a vehicle, the first thing actually you need to do is check that the people producing the vehicle, so the OEM and their suppliers, are actually set up to do cybersecurity. Have they got processes in place organisationally to do it? How, in their design, are they looking at risks? How will they monitor it? And how are they really doing this to design in cybersecurity? So are they set up to do the task? That's number one. Then, once you're happy that actually they kind of know what they're doing, they can explain how they're doing it, looking at the vehicle. And the process is quite similar to actually what Chuck described. It's kind of tell us about the systems, tell us about what is critical, how they can be attacked, what's your risk assessment for the connectivity parts of each system, and how do they talk to each other? And then what have you done to reduce the risks to those things that are most pertinent?
It looks like there's a fair amount of ambiguity, though, there in those final few steps. Like
Yeah.
we want to see that you've done something, but we're not going to tell you exactly what that is.
Yeah, and this is the challenge from a regulatory perspective.
It looks like self-certification, which is
It
what we
is.
have in the US, more or less.
Very much a self-certification body
Okay.
mechanism, because otherwise you're saying you must put this firewall here.
We don't want that.
Yeah, exactly. That's really, really dangerous and probably will limit innovation. So it's more the self-certification model. And then once that's happy, that at the point of design production, they get approval. But it doesn't stop there. There's 2 boxes at the bottom. One is periodic validation that the OEM's processes are still suitable, that they continue to do what they said they're doing, and actually if things have changed, that they've adapted. And secondly, that as risks evolve, that they have processes in place to actually respond. And if they need to do something because, say, the safety of the vehicle could be impaired because something's changed in the world or bug has been found, that they actually have the ability to do so.
Yeah, the only thing I see missing here is an auto ISAC equivalent for sharing, intrusion events and response, protocols, etc.
So I think from a regulatory point of view, there's only so much which regulations in the UN maybe should be doing. And you just named one body which really can help the industry, Auto ISAC, and that sort of other organizations, standards bodies, have a role to play with the question, is this good enough? It's like, yeah, we followed this standard here. Look, this is kind of how to do a risk assessment.
So when can we see this paper?
It's the final paper should hopefully be here in June. All available on the UNECE website. If you go to WP29 and then type in the right words, you'll eventually come to the task force on cybersecurity and over-the-air updates, and then you'll be able to find the latest versions.
Excellent.
Yep, please. No.
The question is about an enforcement mechanism.
Yeah, so there's
it's not really the role of UNECE to enforce regulation, but to influence the policymakers in each country member, right?
Yes, and there's obviously for people doing the approval, will be member state signatory parties in technical terms to the conventions on which it comes. So in the UK, this will be my department and its various parts, making sure we do our bit.
Well, and one more thing before we go to the next speaker. The UK has already passed legislation about requirements for security, correct? That if you're introducing a vehicle in the UK, you have to show that you've done many of these kinds of things. It looks very similar to what I've seen. Yes or no?
No, I think
wasn't there a UK
we
automotive
published
security?
some principles last summer
Yeah, okay.
on what we think good cybersecurity looks like. If you go to the UK website.gov.uk and type cybersecurity principles, you'll find our document.
So those are just recommendations?
Yes,
they don't
they're
have the force of law?
recommendations. They're not
okay.
enforced.
Okay.
But they set out pretty much along the lines of what Chuck has just said, so I don't need to repeat. And I think there is this good synergy between standards bodies. What we're proposing is achievable. My belief is actually that OEMs are already doing what we're pushing for.
Fingers crossed.
I firmly believe that they are looking at the risks. They're participating in the SAE ISO standard, which is coming out, and systems are being designed more and more with cybersecurity from the outset, and this is tier 1s, tier 2s as well. And most OEMs now have that monitoring and response bit in place. There's probably still room for perfection, but what industry doesn't have room for?
I think the GPAC occurred because they didn't have the response mechanisms in place before that happened, and Vlasic and Miller were not satisfied with the response that they got, so they went public. And I think, yeah, everybody got the memo that time. Like, we need to be able to respond rapidly when this happens. Yeah. Any more thoughts, or?
No. That's quite a brief run through, without going into the weeds of really.
If we want to get into the weeds, we'll wait till the other speakers are
I think so.
done. Or people can talk to you after the panel. Yeah. Please thank Darren for his thoughts. Manfred, please introduce yourself and your thoughts. This is Manfred Kunz from Marvell Automotive Center of Excellence.
Yes, my name is Manfred Kunz. I'm coming from Marvell, a semiconductor vendor for now also automotive area. We are mainly, or my business unit is mainly shipping the Wi-Fi and the wired Ethernet area. I'm in Ethernet for the last 20 years. Went from consumer over enterprise Ethernet to high-end enterprise 50 gig. And then a couple of years we started automotive Ethernet with the 100 megabit solutions. So, and when we looked at the 100 megabit solution after all that time in Ethernet and all the complexity over there, we were pretty surprised. The lowest quality level of switches, Soho switch cores, was taken over there to move the data in Ethernet. Everyone was talking about, oh, maybe security, but on the gateway side of the ECU, the network component they were looking into was not secured at all, and even not the configuration was secured of these devices. So I don't know, if you leave your house door open and you don't secure it and expect that someone in your living room is keeping out the people, that's not really the right strategy from our point of view. So we went a different approach and considered what we need to secure in a car, and this meant a lot of investment, different approach on the hardware side. So we put safety hooks inside of the device. We took a secure ECU, combined it with the switch, and the secure ECU, we run firmware over there, and from the firmware standpoint, we went to an ASPICE level of a firmware. And whoever did ASPICE software with taking the standard and going there, we gave up after 1 or 2 months and said, okay, we have to write everything from scratch. It took many years to rewrite all the protocols, all the firmware, all the OS which is in there from scratch for that. That for sure doesn't make your boss happy, because that means investment. Over the last couple of years now, we saw that OEMs and tier ones liked that, mainly the OEMs liked that approach, and so we are in all the current self-driving architectures, prototypes you see out there, moving the data in the network, and also the new upcoming big gateways. So the areas we considered to secure, and I'll talk a little bit about it, was the software, the configuration of these switches or end node devices, runtime configuration access, because if you're in your network, as you say, and someone can change the configuration of a switch, what do you care what your ECU is doing? Your ECU, you won't even get the data anymore to secure and check it if the switch routes them somewhere else in your network. Diagnostic access, OBD port is the typical port coming into switches, not the most secure interface in a car today. And then over-the-air update, configuration and firmware update, data exchange, and then at the end, what we do in most of the cases today is intrusion detection, prevention, denial of service attacks. So the first thing we had to make sure every software we execute in our device, and I won't go in every detail over here. If someone has detailed questions, I'm here after the speech also. We ensure the authenticity and integrity of a software running in the device. And we ended up being the only component vendor who's offering that for the network components. All other components just execute what you give them. The next thing is the complex software update, over-the-air update. If you come in and we talk here about a diagnostic tool in a garage or over the air, that port mainly ends up at the Ethernet switch at the edge of the network when you come in. ECU, TCU entrance ends up over here. So what we also ensured that we have a layer running inside of the switch which can run authentication of who wants to do an update, run SSL and VPN if you want to encrypt your update all the way down to the OEM server. And we have fail-safe operations over here for updating and checking authenticity before we flash anything inside of a device. The next thing is runtime access. Whoever comes into the device and communicates with the ECU, we can authenticate the incoming entity, and we can build a secure connection and then communicate over the secure connection. With that, we can do diagnostic, we can do different changes on the device, but we always ensure that everything is authentic. So, and let me talk a little bit about the last thing. So, switches have a lot of capabilities doing inspection of data runtime. So, means runtime really with TCAM, combination of TCAM, pre-classification engines, hashes, and then inspecting the data traffic. So what we do, we can run algorithms inside. We do a detection of a denial of service attack. If a denial of service attack is there, we can change the port stage, we can close the port, we can log this data either internally or to an entity of an authentication server from a tier 1 or OEM, where then new algorithms are built and detected. Data is logged for the complete fleet of the car, and new rules are driven down to the car. So this is not a dream. That is today, it's practice, and that is something we ship in devices. And as I said, it was a big challenge to go that route inside of a semiconductor vendor because a lot of people questioned that. Today, I'm happy to stay here and say that the car industry really asked for that feature and takes it. So I wasn't looking like a fool in front of my boss when I decided to go that route. So I think, and that's all I can tell you to that.
Just a quick question, Manfred. Wouldn't you agree that one of the great challenges we have with securing vehicles is the fact that there are so many networks, very few of which are secure or even securable?
The networks are securable, but they aren't secure today.
Thank you very much.
But it's also every time it's a question of the cost, right? Every security layer, if you add an ECU to a network switch or to everything, you add cost, you add complexity, you add firmware, you add software to it, even more lines of code if you do that. But you can secure them, but it's adding cost.
I thought CAN was not
No,
particularly...
you can secure the network, not CAN.
No. I'm saying CAN is a somewhat insecure
Yes.
network. That's all I was saying. But please thank Manfred for his insights. Please welcome Tom Leismore with Proma.
Thanks. So I'm Tom Leismore from Promon, CTO. Promon is operating a little bit in the, I think, a slightly different area primarily. We have a background in the finance sector, looking at security of mobile app, mobile banking, internet banking, and so on. Has been in that segment for several years, and we just wanted to share some of our insights and observations within the space of the automotive sector, and hopefully look into what we can possibly do to...
I would say what you have to say would be highly relevant. People are looking to turn the car into a mobile wallet at this point, so
Yes.
paying for tolls and gas and parking, etc.
Yes. So one thing that we see already in the automotive sector, I would say, is a switch from having a physical key to the car, for example, into using the mobile phone, the mobile app, to unlocking and do certain things with the car. So it's actually a switch from having something physical to doing something on the mobile phone. And in that switch, I think we have to look into the security aspects. And it's exactly the same switch that we have seen in the payment and finance sector. You have maybe you had a physical credit card, now you do things on the mobile phone. You went to the bank physically, now you do things on the smartphone. My personal background is from University of Oslo and SINTEF, which is a large independent research organization in Norway. Proman is also a spin-off from those environments. And essentially, what we do in Proman is to develop a security shield for applications, which allow the application to defend itself and act and function securely, even if the device or the environment is infected. We took a short look at the Tesla mobile app, and I will show some things related to that. I'll also shortly just discuss the different aspects of app security and try to share some insights from the finance industry. Well, I would say it has been a very, very targeted industry. We have seen a lot of hacking, malware activities through several years. So in certain aspects, the finance industry has matured in many ways, but it's also a very innovative area. So it's where the end user and innovation meets a high security demand, which is highly challenging. And in Proman, as a company, we are around now 100 million end users around the world. So even in this very, very active area of security, it's good to see that we actually still maintain a clean sheet. So there has been no money fraud by circumventing any of our solutions, which does not mean that we provide perfect security, but it means that we, I think, hopefully are doing something right. So let's take a look what we did, and just one notice. Of course, we did responsible disclosure, contacted Tesla very well before we disclosed anything. The communication were more like a one-way street, though. Yeah.
The security of the internet-connected devices that we use in our daily lives heavily depends on the apps used to access, monitor, and control the devices.
I will show an easy way how you can obtain the username and password that a Tesla owner is using to log into the Tesla app and use that to control his car. The methods we use for this are really simple, and they have been known for years and have been also used by cyber criminals for a long time.
So I think just an important note here. So it's not an attack against Tesla, and we don't want to prove anything in particular. But there's one important aspect here. So what we're trying to show is just that if a ordinary hacker on the street take and use the tools that he has available just in front of him, what can he do? So this is essentially what we see here.
What I've done now is I've created a free Wi-Fi hotspot that displays an advertisement that's targeted towards Tesla owners that says that if you install this free app, you can get a free burger at the restaurant close by. So I can see now here Lars has logged into my Wi-Fi hotspot. What happened now is that Lars was tricked to install an app on his phone. The app installed malware on his phone, and that malware is manipulating the Tesla app on his device, so that when Lars logs into the app, it will send his username and password to me. So now here I can see where he actually is, and let's just wait and see where he's parking.
So so the owner of the car installed this free burger app in the hope of getting a free burger. In reality, without him noticing, we took control of his mobile device, and in the next step, the Tesla app. due to the different features in the app, we were then able to locate the car, which is the next step we'll see now.
I was really a criminal. I would have done this not during the day, walking around with a big laptop, but I would probably use a small phone or something. But this is just a demonstration, right? Let's see, I think it should be over there. Okay, there you see, that's the car. Let's see what we can do with it. Okay, now the last thing I have to do, I have to be able to drive the car without having the key. That's also possible. The keyless driving is enabled, which means we can just drive off with the car. Let's try.
Did you hear that sound? Yeah. What was that? Anyone knows what that was? It was some kind of an alarm. And we have some criminal action going on here, so does anyone know? Any suggestions?
They're sending a data signal back to test the same car.
Yeah, could be. It was a seatbelt alarm. So I think we can learn some things here. One important thing to learn is that hackers apparently don't wear seatbelts. That's one important learning. Of course, the second learning, and it's kind of interesting. It tells us something about the security of the car, right? It reacts to not wearing a seatbelt, but it doesn't react to the fact that it's a criminal driving off with a car.
And that's how easy it was. We have full control of the Tesla and can just drive over with it.
So they've corrected that? Vulnerability or no?
That's an interesting question. So, which brings me in a little bit difficult situation actually. So, we found as you see, we don't really give any technical details, and that's of course by purpose. We don't want to help the bad guys.
The coffee hour is coming up, though. No, go ahead.
So we had some findings, which I would say is very far from best practice, and I believe that some of those findings were taken care of. There are other findings that were not taken care of.
I hope John Podesta does not own a Tesla. Sorry,
it's
that's
actually
U.S. humor.
It's an employee, so he's a happy Tesla owner. So, but he's a little bit worried from the security perspective, I would say. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that maybe the switch from hardware to software in terms of security did not go so well in certain aspects. I cannot really go into the security aspects of the mobile apps. It's very complex. There are many aspects to it. We could have done other things. If you're close to the Tesla car with a key fob, then you can also use the app to remote control the app, which might also have some security aspects, especially if a criminal is controlling the car and you're close by. There are certain things you have to be very careful about. So the security aspects are, of course, there. You can steal the car. You can see where the car is, which is maybe information that the criminals can use for other things. It's a good time to rob the house if you can see that the owner is at the other end of the town, right? So there are quite many privacy and security aspects here, which is not directly related to the car as such, but definitely relevant for the owner of the car. But just to sum it up, I would say that what we found here is essentially that I think the key was under the mat. And definitely the security in that particular app, I would say, is definitely not at the standards of what we see in the finance sector and banking sector, which I don't really see a reason why it shouldn't be at least at the same level, given the importance of the topic. What we see in the finance sector, just to share a couple of insights, is that it's a very fast-moving sector. Innovation, end users has a lot of requirements. They want to do wonderful things, which of course we all want to do. So it's a very delicate balance to try to make that secure. Globally, we see different requirements from the regulatory authorities in the finance sector. We also have some EU directives now. Just out is the PSD2, which relates to things like strong authentication, and essentially one of the pointers says that risks has to be mitigated, even if the mobile device is compromised. And it relates to things like not only prevention, but also detection and response in case that things are compromised. So I think maybe also in the coffee break it will be interesting to see if we can share some experiences here. I think in the finance sector there's a lot of good activities. There's a lot of experience with what the bad guys are up to. There is a lot of monitoring. So part of the security here, especially in the finance sector, is also monitoring the bad guys, which means that there are dedicated bodies which essentially is only doing one thing, and that is monitoring the malware, the techniques of the bad guys. Very often when new software is brought out, it's penetration tested by third parties. That was not done in this case, clearly. But there are also some good experience there. So I think the finance sector is an interesting area where you can see high requirements in security, quite successfully meeting the drive to innovate and the desire to do new things, for example, with the smartphone.
Yeah, it's a critical area. I think we treat the car as this last frontier of freedom and detachment from reality, and a refuge. In some respects, we take for granted now that we put a password on the phone. We take it for granted that we have a password for obviously making a withdrawal, even though we're putting a card in. We put a password on the computer. We may not be that far from having to put a password or some kind of multiple element authentication in the car, because the location is not only that you're not home. There was an incident in the DC area, because we have casinos over in Maryland, that criminals were following gamblers home who had winnings and robbing them at their home away from the casino. And this business of remote controlling a vehicle from a phone is becoming increasingly popular, primarily for parking, but if you can do it for parking, you can do it for other purposes as well, which I think is what you were alluding to.
Yes. Yeah, so exactly. So there are so many angles to the security. Just one anecdote on that. The Tesla owner that you saw in the picture here. One day he was sending some internal emails claiming that the temperature of his Tesla car had risen while he was driving home, which of course all of the techies in our lab denied any relation to. So security is very, very, very complex, many angles to consider, that's for sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we have Devere Resnick from Harman. Are you still doing demos on the show floor, or is that all shut down now?
What, here?
Yes.
No, we're not.
Oh,
We're finished.
All right.
Does this work? I'm not at Yeah. Okay. So, hi everyone. My name is Devere, as I mentioned before. I'm from Harman Automotive Cybersecurity Business Unit. A word about Harman, for those not familiar, we're a leading Tier 1 company working with probably all the OEMs worldwide. We're here at Geneva at the Auto Show, presenting some of our technologies. Myself, I'm coming from TowerSec. TowerSec was an Israeli cybersecurity company that was acquired by Harman 2 years ago. Before that, I worked for other startup companies. We've been then acquired by Samsung, so it's like a road of acquisitions here. But we're keeping the blue, so that's why I can stand in blue wherever I go. I want to talk about like 3 trends and then the work that we're doing with the OEMs. The panelists that were before me, you've heard about all the activities that they're doing and what we're doing in the industry to better protect our vehicles and obviously the safety of our passengers. So the cars are connected. I mean, people talk here about connectivity and mobile phones, and the fact is that I think last year I saw a data point from AT&T that 2017 was the first year that they actually activated more SIM cards on cars than SIM cards for phones, because mobile phones are already saturated. We're at 100 and something %, and cars, despite all the big numbers and the graphs that you're seeing here, it's only, let's say, about 100 million connected cars, and we have a lot to grow to. So this is definitely the next realm if we're talking about the economy, the industry, telco providers, the work that they're seeing. The second trend is autonomous vehicles, obviously. We heard last month, I think, that California regulated the use of autonomous vehicles without a driver. So starting in April, you can go to the DMV in California, say, I have a vehicle, and it's an autonomous vehicle, and I want to have it driven on public roads without a driver as a safety, which is a first. It's not that easy. I mean, obviously, you have to stand by some best practices, as some of my distinguished colleagues here mentioned. You need to have certain aspects in the vehicle, the ability, for instance, to detect the vehicle, to detect security events, the ability to take remote control from it if something happens in the case of an accident. And this is actually a very interesting chart that shows last year in 2017, you had 35 or 40 cities worldwide that had autonomous programs running in their city limits. So even without taking the driver out, you already have cities that have driverless cars driving in their cities. And what are the cyber implications of that? The third trend is the unconnected world. Who has a connected car here? So everyone else don't have a connected car, right? Right. You want to have a connected car? Super. So there are ways to do that. I mean, the majority of the vehicles on our roads are not connected, and they want to be connected. There is always this tension between our demand for more connectivity, more personalization. I want to bring my content, my iPhone, my Android into the car, and the OEMs needs to preserve safety and obviously regulate the vehicles as they should. It's not a laptop. If you put a laptop in the sun, or if I put my iPhone in the sun, it reaches 40 degrees, it will shut down. The car can't operate like that. It needs to be bulletproof to any safety. So connecting the unconnected is another big trend that's affecting the industry. Now, OEMs, and we've been working a lot with them, and also other tier ones, they're familiar with the risks. They have big organizations dealing with it. GM is one of them. Jeff Masamilia is the senior VP for cybersecurity. Everything that relates to cybersecurity and privacy falls within Jeff. Yesterday, we announced a collaboration with PSA. We've been working with PSA for 2 years now on putting solutions, developing for automotive cybersecurity into their next generation vehicle architecture. So when you ask automotive executives what are the biggest concerns and obstacles for the growth of connected car, obviously cybersecurity is there because they're familiar with it. But then they ask the second question. It's a survey from Foley. It's available online. Google it. The same question, the biggest obstacle to the growth of autonomous vehicles. And I'll let you have a second to reflect on the number. So we're basically come from all the various hacks that we've seen and all the attacks that happened, also the Tesla and the GPAC and all the others are ethical hackers or security researchers who are looking into ways to get into vehicles. And now that we're looking into autonomous, and we've closed that gap. We have gateways, we have firewalls, we're using intrusion detection, we're using standard bodies, the Auto ASAC, SAE, ISO. But when developing autonomous vehicles, and we have autonomous vehicles running in our streets. If you were at CES, Roger was there, I was there, you had vehicles, autonomous vehicles, driving in Las Vegas. But yet, cybersecurity isn't the top priority in the industry, and that needs to change. So what can we do next as an industry? An end-to-end intrusion detection solution, cybersecurity, to protect everything. It needs to start from the in-vehicle, looking at detection, reporting, prevention, and response. The fact that I collect all of the security data and send it upwards to a cloud doesn't stop over there. I need to be able to respond to it. Do I mitigate the risk? Maybe it's a software bug, 100 lines of codes. We're all humans, it's software. There are bugs in it. Maybe I need to do an over-the-air update. If I have identified as an OEM or as a fleet manager that there is a problem with one of my vehicles, maybe I'll share an incident with Auto ASAC, a great organization which Harman is very involved with, so that other car makers around the world will be aware of that threat. Future-proof vehicles, invest in R&D. It's not about the current situation. We know exactly what is the current attack surface, what are the attack vectors for the vehicles, V2X sensors, mobile apps, tire pressure. Everything is an attack vector. But what will happen in 3 years' time when we'll have autonomy and mobility? And the third, the standards, the guidelines, the information sharing are very important. And it needs to be regulated as well as self-regulated. Because cybersecurity is a very subjectual topic. There isn't one standard. But we need to get it started. We need to share information. Auto, the financial ASAC, and my colleague here can attest to it more than I do, did wonders for the financial industry and really helped in lowering down the risks of fraud in their industry. And Auto ASAC will do the same. Same as will the SAE and the ISO bodies that are working on creating a global standard of what cybersecurity means. Also in terms of governmental progress and the Self-Drive Act that is currently shaping up in the US. Thank you.
Just a couple quick questions. Number one, there's no silver bullet, correct?
True, there isn't.
The attack vectors could actually include dealers and actually could, the connected cars could pose a risk to the enterprise itself. I have heard that, you know, the network of an OEM in the past, I wish I had the details, but I've heard that it was hacked through their vehicles.
Yes, exactly. I think the main challenge when you're looking at securing a vehicle versus a traditional IT is the cyber-physical threat. Because it's not, I hacked a phone, a laptop, as severe as it is, it's virtual, it's data. Whereas if you hack a vehicle, you have connection to the physical. You can change the vehicle, what it's doing. You have access to the infrastructure, to the backend. So that is exactly the main, I think, differentiation between why you can use the same methods, but you need to think about it from the ground up. Don't say, in 3 years' time, I'll put cybersecurity as a top priority. When you're developing autonomous now and connected cars now, it needs to be from the bottom up.
And because this is touching so many parts of the organization across all the silos, it requires a different kind of a relationship than, say, Harman, for example, normally would have with an OEM. Does it not?
In a way, yes. I mean, we're working with all the OEMs, also the tier ones. You need to have, I think the OEMs are doing a lot of work, both in terms of resources, evaluations, POCs, but it's definitely time for more, let's say, start of production, in a way.
Well, you're working not only across their internal silos, but also all the other suppliers, and I believe there's also probably a little bit of education involved.
Yes, I think that we're working across all of the industry, but with the OEMs and the tier ones, it's not a new thing. I don't think that anyone here in the industry thinks that cybersecurity is a rarity, that it's not happening. Cars will be hacked. No one can guarantee 100% protection. And as an OEM, you have the responsibility to keep the car and the passengers safe. So you need to also put in the measures, the countermeasures, both the software, the guidelines, the best practices that will guarantee it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
And last but not least, Giuseppe Ferranda.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Giuseppe Ferranda. I'm with Caramba Security, which is a company that cares about security in vehicle. I've been in the industry for many years now. It's about 30 years that I work on different activities. I've been just talking about the recent experience. I've been involved in the development of navigation systems and infotainment systems in a tier one. I've been involved into the development of a connected vehicle platform for a large OEM in Europe. And at a certain point, someone thought it was a good idea to say, hey, you've been part of the problem, now you go and try to fix it. So I moved to look at vehicle cybersecurity, and I started this job some years ago. And now I'm with this company that you can see on the wall. The problem of cybersecurity, among all the other that I've faced, and I think that most of you have faced in the automotive industry in the past years, is the one that scared me most. And the reason is simple, because considering the relevance and the type of damage that cybersecurity and the risk connected to it can make, it is, I feel that is an underestimated risk. I don't see all the energy and all the activities around cybersecurity that it deserves when we look at the new challenges that we have in front of us as automaker and people that cares about mobility. And you know, we're talking about autonomous driving. We talk about V2X and many other stuff. So we should be really taking a lot of attention to these for many reasons. First reason is that, as some of the colleagues has just said, we can run the risk to kill people if we don't care about security, and someone can take over the control of a vehicle. The other reason is that even if we design interesting things like autonomous driving stuff, and at a certain point, you know, the people start to perceive that as a risk rather than a benefit, then we try to kill emerging technology and stuff just because people start to be scared about it. And the third thing, looking at on the OEM side, is a problem of reputation. I mean, it's risk, cybersecurity attacks, and things that may happen as a mass destruction, as Chuck was mentioning, can destroy the reputation and the business of an OEM. Okay, definitely. So, what I have learned, I want to share with you a couple of things that I've learned working at in the industry and working on cybersecurity. One is that cybersecurity should be considered by design. You cannot add cybersecurity at the end of the development. You cannot talk about autonomous vehicle and you know, after a while decide that you want to secure the system. This cannot be the right strategy. And the other things is that security is not something that you can sell to your customer. I mean, you will never see a feature listed in a dealership saying, and it is also secure, right? So if you buy this model instead of the other one, yeah, you spend a bit more and it's secure. Now, this is something that people consider as a given. And people trust the OEMs and trust they have done all that is needed in order to make that vehicle safe. Okay, so it's something that you have to consider. And looking at what happened in the connected car and why we end up seeing vehicles that can be hacked is the conjunction of two things that already been mentioned from my colleagues. One is the fact that a lot of mechanics control are shifting to electronic, okay, braking, steering, and such. And the other things is that there's been a lot of enthusiasm on connected vehicle car without taking into account that something may go wrong. And when you put the two things together, you created a perfect storm, because you have cars that can be controlled by electronic, by software, and can also be reached by someone connected to the internet. Okay, so this is where the entire story starts. And so the preoccupation, the level of worries should be higher than the level of preoccupation that I see today in the industry. That's why I'm a little bit worried about it. Having said that, and talking about autonomous security. So we talk about autonomous cars, so why don't we try also to talk about autonomous security, which is the concept that I will try to tell you and explain, and why Caramba Security is working on this concept. We start from the point of view that you want to secure your home from people to step into it. Okay, then you want to control it and understand if someone was able to enter. So you want to have detection, but you want to have also protection. And you have to try to identify a way in which you can increase the level of protection of a vehicle, protecting all the vulnerable systems and all the different ECUs that are connected to the different network, and try to follow the same logic of protecting a house. So you build all the protection in our house, you have armor doors and everything, and you protect the perimeter of your house, and then you start to understand what you can bring into the car and protect the valuable things that you have into your car. So just a few slides. So you see, and just a summary of what I've just said. So the main things, the most important part that you have in a system, in your car, are the ECUs, all the controllers that controls the different features. And then, as we say, it is something that can allows you to turn off and on and off your wipers, your headlamps, your steering, and such. So this is where you want to be focused as a first step, when you want to start to define how you protect, and now you seal, as we say in Caramba, you seal the perimeter of your ECU. That is where you wanna start and protect the core of it. We just was mentioning the fact that every car has million line of codes. Okay, you can trust this data or not. This is data that are found in securityweek.com. What I can guarantee is that the first line is true, because I've been through there. But that there can be bugs, a lot of bugs that you cannot even control, maybe sometimes, because there are bugs that can come from the design of your chipset. There are bugs that comes from the operating system that you use. There can be bugs in the software that you develop. And you cannot control every bugs. I mean, you can do whatever you can, and most of the OEM, or all the OEM, are spending a lot of time to test and validate a vehicle, but sometimes bugs are there, and the attackers are searching for those bugs and try to exploit them and transform these bugs into a vulnerability, into something that may allows them to drop a piece of code, something that is a malware piece of code, into the systems. And from that point, they have access to the entire subsystems in a network. So there are bugs. You cannot find all the bugs, and those bugs can become exploited, can become malware. And as you were saying, from a specific system, from infotainment systems, but not just the infotainment systems are the systems that you should be worried about. You can reach all the different subsystems. So you need two levels of protection, and today we talk about how to protect the ECUs. The second level of protection is, of course, to protect the communication inside the vehicle, which is another important step. But and we were talking about systems to protect networks and such. But to stay focused for a second on what you can do on these ECUs, the things that you want to do, and that the starting point for the discussion is. With respect to ICT systems, systems that is into a vehicle is a system that comes out of a plant with a factory setting, with a nominal state, with a number of features that cannot be changed by the final user. Of course, those features can be changed over the air, but it is under the control of the OEMs. Okay, so when you have a system in a car, you know what he should be doing and what he's supposed to do, and what are the kind of operation that you can allow and operation that you cannot allow. Okay, so the concept of autonomous security means that you want to first seal the factory setting, meaning that when you build an image, when you build the software that runs into the ECU, you want to sign in a secure way using a digital certificates, using SHA-256 signature and such. You can sign every executable that is into that ECUs. And at a runtime, when you bring up the systems and when a library or a software is bring to the memory for the execution, you check the signature. And this is a first way in which you can try to understand if the piece of code that is coming up into the memory is a piece of code that is meant to be executed. The second part of the story is that you have the ability when you build your system to understand, looking at the code, what is the return point of a specific function, what is the right sequence of invoking APIs and function calls, and you want to track that. So, and you can understand that if someone is trying to or was able to drop a piece of code into the systems such that he is trying to perform or to call feature that he's not supposed to call or is not being called in the right order. Okay, so this is there are two simple concepts that Caramba is working on and is stressing in trying to understand what is the best way to protect the systems and how we can build a system that grows step by steps. Okay, so you first protect your core part of the systems. You protect your ECU. You protect, everything that is vital to the car, and then you grow and build the rest of your strategy and your security strategy on top of it. That's it.
So let me ask you, what do you think the greatest threat is, and maybe why consumers are a little, unsure about how worried they should be? Is it identity theft? Is it vehicle theft? Is it remote control of the vehicle? Is it ransomware? Well, I know all of the above, right?
Yeah, I think that all of the above. I think that today people are less worried about privacy. I mean, people are willing to give data to provide information about themselves for a burger. Someone was mentioning about a burger. I'm not a burger guy, but I mean, so maybe if you offer me tiramisu, I will give you my username and password. But that's another story. Now, I don't think that privacy is scaring the people too much. I think that people believes a lot, and the attitude that they have towards car is that they believe a lot on what the OEM is doing, and that the OEM is doing all the best that he can do in order to protect them.
But your former employer got quite a shock 2 years ago. Wouldn't you agree? It cost them, what, $100 million or more?
I don't know what you're talking about. Sometimes I still see scratches on my back, and I was with FCA in the past, and so Miller and Valasek was, the guys who.
You had nothing to do with that. I'm quite aware.
Right. No, but I was telling you before there was a lot of enthusiasm in building connected vehicles. So it seems that at that time it looks like that everything was possible and you can do almost everything, and that the world was made only of good guys. Which is not the case, and not many people was looking at car as a new frontier. Now that you start to talk about connected car data, and everybody wants to collect the data from the customer. Now that mobile operators are seeing the automotive business as the next frontier to expand their capabilities, and such, it is becoming a target. And you know, and those things really, the problem of cybersecurity can kill the reputation of an OEMs. So until nothing happens, everybody is happy, you know. But as soon as something happens, everybody still to become, you know, worried about.
For at least a week or two, yes.
Yes.
So we have time for one question. If someone is aching to ask a question of somebody or all of the members of this panel, please take this opportunity. Oh, I tried, Arno. No, it's okay.
Thank you. No, it's okay? Okay. So I'm Stepan Kovac from ITK AVTO BVS in Geneva. And I have a question to the speaker from Norway. I'm very bad at memorizing names, sorry for that. So basically you said that there are no secure mobile operating systems. I can agree on that, but before there was a question on whether there can be securable networks. So now my question is about your opinion on whether there are securable, whether mobile operating systems are securable in your opinion.
Yeah, so I think the one important one important aspect is that there are added a lot of security both at the hardware and the software level for the smartphones, for example. But then essentially what you have is a race between raising the security on those parts and the tools that are readily available in the market for the bad guys. Those tools are developed as well. So it's important that security is added not at one particular place, but in all the places. And what we found in the Tesla case was that there were essentially no added security at the app level, which means that you can walk straight into the app. So there is definitely a lot of securities that you can add to get ahead of the bad guys and the tools of the bad guys.
And also about the mobile operating systems inside cars, because basically now we have, for instance, not to make publicity, but Android for cars. So your take on that?
It really depends on the kind of the feature set that you add to those, but there is no doubt that Android itself is no guarantee for security. So you have to think multiple layers.
Most likely Android would be running in a hypervisor on Green Hills or QNX or something else, actually.
Yeah, correct. But just one last comment. You talk also about part of securing the users, the car users, is to follow the bad guys, which obviously exploits some security vulnerabilities that enables that. Wouldn't it be easier or make more sense to make, let's say, the smartphones of most people secure, rather than allowing holes which surely enable to follow bad guys, but also allow them to hack good guys?
Yeah, so I think if you want to make for example, the mobile phones highly secure, you would have to stop development. And then you would start your certification process, and you would not add features for 10 years. And then maybe in 2025, we would have a pretty secure and highly certified mobile phone that no one would use.
Thank you for your opinion. We are looking forward to doing
that
the
was
contrary.
a short answer.
Wait, one more question from Arnaud today.
Yes. Hi.
Go for it.
Okay, good. Okay. So my name is Arnaud Tadei. I'm both a direct report to the CTO of Symantec, and I am as well a chairman at the ITU Study Group 17 on security. So in fact, I really appreciated the panel and the comments, the insight and the videos. Of course, security is extremely complex, and I think we can all agree that we don't have the time to really go deeper dive. If we, all of us, would have a workshop and would go deeper dive, I think the situation would be even much more scary, right? Security is touching from, hardware to software to anything in the car, to what goes outside of the car, that goes on the platform, to the big data, to the analytics, and so on. And we have a densification of problems that are self-complicating the story, right? Big data has helped machine learning and AI to come, but at the same time, these have effects on big data itself, and it's creating more problems on the security of big data, as an example. To make things even worse, there are other standard bodies that have other ideas now on what should be privacy versus security. It's not privacy and security, it's privacy against security.
Are you going to ask a question?
I'm going to ask a question. In fact, my question here is there a chance we could go one level deeper, especially on, I think Adrian made a very good point on the end-to-end security, and could we really discuss about what are we missing in terms of protocols to make it working, technical foundation to make it working across car makers, across operators, across OEMs, across clouds? Do you think there is a hope to get this done?
That is a coffee break question, but I'm going to ask you a question.
Yes.
In your work in Group 17, are there learnings from other industries, say the airline industry, that the automotive industry could learn from?
Yes, there are a few things we do in the study group. One was the resolution 94 when the unfortunate story on the Malaysia Airlines aircraft crashed. We realized that there is a black box issue that actually is not just on airlines, right? So that's an area we work on. We have started a full question on intelligent transport systems with Hyundai has joined us, Alibaba has joined us, and others, and we discuss about a number of points here. And there is something that we as well started in application security, is to work on a technical framework for security as a service. Because today the problem is not that we are lacking security tools, is that it costs a lot, nothing works with each other, we are deploying security all over the place, but nobody talks to the other one. Say, I see a problem, can you handle it?
Wait, so security as a service, is this something coming out of another industry, or this is coming out of the automotive conversation?
No, this is coming out of the operators industry, the operators themselves. So it's a point of view problem. If you rely on the operators to transport all of what you need to transport, can they offer you other means to secure what you need to secure, for example, between the IoT platform and the car and other constituencies? So what are the technical controls we can have in the network that could help you guys to actually do a better job when you have to come back with telemetry, when you have to get over the air, when you have all sorts of things? Because let's remember, the bad guys understood how to hide themselves in all of that. They know how to hide themselves in the encryption. So we believe we are secure by design.
Okay.
We are not.
Okay.
Got it?
Next year, you'll be on the panel.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
Roger, can I answer a bit?
You're stating security as a service, which fundamentally sounds frightening. Security should not be a service. It should not even be a feature. It should be a built-in base functionality. And we need to make sure that we're doing that. And frankly, I will state, as an industry, we in the room here have the ability to do our own due diligence, and we have to ask ourselves fundamentally, to Giuseppe's point, are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? Because we are frantically adding features and features and features, and there's a reason we've grown from 20 million to 100 million to 150 million lines of code, because we're adding features at an unbelievable pace. When was the last time that we said, you know what, we're going to remove some features so that we can make sure it's safe or secure? We don't do that. We just add the features, and with, I could frankly say, reckless abandon at this point, because we're not doing enough to make sure that we're protecting the system. So as an industry, we frankly need to ask ourselves, one, are we part of the problem or are we part of the solution? Because if you're not part of the solution, by definition, you're part of the problem. And we simply need to add security and safety faster than we add features, because right now we have a system which is balanced away from safety and security, as is witnessed by the hacks and the breaches that we've seen.
Roger, can I just comment
one
more
you
thing?
may.
I think that if you're looking at it from the automotive industry, there is the system, there is the balances check. I mean, the ISO, the SAE, the Auto ISAC are organizations that are already making progress. You have the J3061, you have the J26262, and all of those are best practices that automotives, that OEMs are already using daily on how to make their system secure. And I think we'll always have that gap in terms of, as my colleague here said, that we'll always be like a step behind what the consumer wants, because they have their needs to add more connectivity, and then we come from the cybersecurity standpoint and say, how do we protect that new attack vector? But the work is being done, and I think the best testament of it is the Self-Drive Act that was just introduced to the Senate last year, a few months ago, that states that when you do develop an autonomous vehicle and you want it deployed, one of the things that as a car maker, technology company, you need to have in that vehicle is an idea solution. You need to have a system that's able to detect, report, and respond to cybersecurity or privacy events. So that's a work that's already taking place from the industry.
I get the final word as moderator. We're talking about security because we're getting so much more connectivity. And I would add to that that we will not have security without connectivity. But the thing to bear in mind, as I get told by gentlemen like these, and women as well working in the space, is security is a process. It's not a solution. It's ongoing. So you don't set it and forget it. That's why we need the connectivity associated with that. And I'm going to pay a little more attention to what Group 17 is working on, Arnaud. So thank you very much. And thank you for your attention. Please thank the panel.
Okay, so as we are running a little bit late, I would propose to keep the half-an-hour break which we had planned, because we are tired. And we come back sharp 4:30 for next session, which is still very interesting. So is from a different point of view, a different angle, more on the services. I think you want to listen to the next one. So please take your break and come back refreshed, 4:30 sharp. Thank you.
Got all the presentations for the next.
I'm Anna Maria.
Hi, I'm Nigel.
Nice to
Jeffries.
meet you. Yes, I have it here.
Oh, you got it there. Brilliant.
Yeah. So I will just put them up as I do. And
Mine's
then
much smaller than everyone else's, but there you go.
No, it's going to be big, but it just looks like small.
No, I mean.
Oh, you mean what?
Oh, the file size was much smaller. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. Don't worry. It's going to be perfect. Okay. Thanks. Enjoy your coffee. Hey, did you meet?
No, the fun is over.
The what?
The fun is over.
No, one more. One more fun. This is the best part.
Of course.
Yeah.
The best speakers.
Exactly.
Do you usually speak English, French? What's your native language? Spanish, I guess. Or
no, Albanian. I'm from Albania.
Okay, no, I don't speak Albanian.
Yeah, but French as well.
Do you like better English or French?
Because in ITU we usually speak in English, and I studied in the UK, so yeah, it's much easier for me. But at the same time, I like to speak French so I can practice it, because I never get to. So yeah. Arnold, yeah, sure. Yeah. Sorry. I loved the video. It was so good. It was so good. Nah, it was very good. We went over time, but that's what I was telling Stefan. Let's keep going because it's very nice and people are engaged. So it's sad to cut. I mean, everybody came here from somewhere, so we can go. We have a room until 6 something. Normally we finish at 5:30, but yeah, I know. No, it was really good. I really liked it. But you made the video yourself, right? Everything. Yeah, we made everything. Oh, okay. No, I mean, it's really good. Because there's a lot of videos like this. I think I watched a couple that they put this field where with a key, that they can lock something.
Did you put the presentation, that slide I gave you?
Yes.
Or can we see it?
I'll just see. The slide. This one.
Yeah.
I will not put it up. So
I have modified a little bit to make it nice. Just posted when, where, and the title. I think that I modified this, how communication will change vehicle and transport, as we always do. Before was communication change transport, and that's it. Is this title the correct one?
Unless you've got a really great job with Google or the media company, I'm not interested.
You see, that's why I didn't want
I told them I'm flying to South Africa tomorrow for fun. I'm having fun at work. I don't want to change.
This is what was in.
What are you doing there? Just another event, or?
Yeah,
Okay.
but the event is starting on Tuesday or Wednesday
Oh.
in Johannesburg.
For example, was
But
not
of course,
mentioned that there is a
you're just flying.
And I fly to Cape Town.
Just to
I
hang out.
And I want to see the coast. And
Yeah.
Cape is very famous. I've never seen it.
Yeah,
so
I've never been. Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. I'm jealous.
and then, but the really crazy thing is,
Yeah.
and then nobody believes the story. I'm a really crazy cyclist.
Okay.
So probably I already have cycled with her husband in Berkeley.
No.
So everywhere I go I cycle, and then I found out on Sunday there's a huge cycling event in Cape Town.
No way.
I found out after I booked the flights more or less.
So then you're gonna cycle?
Yeah.
some adjustment, and it's fine.
And then race 108 kilometers on the coast.
Wow, you're a serious
No,
cyclist.
and 180 short.
Yeah, right. Not for me. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so
For this event,
that's why I was checking to change my flights.
Yeah, but
so
you're good. I mean, you will
tomorrow.
get the event. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but
Okay, thanks.
Oh, that's nice. That's really nice. It's good like this?
Yes, it's perfect.
Yeah.
anyway, this is a fantastic event. So thank you so much. I will have to buy Jürgen lunch for setting this up.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are starting. So if you can kindly return to your seat. And I'd like to invite the panelists to come on the stage. We already have the moderator, Mr. Michael Sena. Thank you. Okay, Michael, the floor is yours. Yes. When you want to start, please. Thank you.
Okay, we shall get started. Welcome to the last session. My name is Michael Sena. I'm very pleased to have been asked to be a moderator. As I've said to this is my third event. This, as far as I've seen, and I've seen a lot of events, this event, because of the format, because of the structure, is the best. There isn't any other event that I've been to and taken part in, either as a participant or as an attendee, that I find provides the level of information and the possibilities for interacting with people. I hope you feel the same way, and I'm sure there's going to be something that will be sent around to all of the attendees. We'll ask for your opinions, your ideas, and make it even better in the future. Our format is going to be a little bit different. We've got all of our speakers, participants, panelists will have 12 minutes. I've told them the amount of time you take to do your presentation will just take away from the amount of time you'll have to talk with us all about what you're really trying to tell us, what message you're really trying to get across. So there'll be a presentation of around 5 minutes, and then we're going to have questions related directly to that presentation. If I don't have anybody who's got a question out there, I'll ask a question. We'll have the panelists will ask questions, and then after 12 minutes, we'll go to the next one. So without any more time, Lisa, you're up.
My name is Lissa Franklin, and I am from Best Mile. We're a mobility platform focusing on autonomous fleets, so I'm going to jump us to autonomous. Today we've had the opportunity to hear certainly about connected vehicles, and actually the gentleman from Harman, he put up the picture of all the various places in the world where there are autonomous mobility, and one of them is Sion, Switzerland, of which we're managing the fleets, so you can go if you have time and get in a vehicle on public streets with pedestrians and cars and everything else, and it's been running commercially for 2 years. So I want to talk a little bit, we talk about mobility a lot, and mobility is certainly a term in the wireless industry, but as we're moving towards mobility services and mobility for connected vehicles, I want to define who mobility providers are, at least in the environment ecosystem that I'm talking about. So on one hand, we're talking about public transit agencies, we're talking about smart cities and transportation operators, and on the other hand, we're talking about transportation network companies, those that are going from, let's say, ride-hailing onto robo-taxis. And then you're starting to see also microtransit, so small services working within cities. All of these are trying to work together, but very disparate, and you've got public entities, private companies working together, both for kind of existing traditional transportation and then starting to invite autonomous vehicles and into that ecosystem. So what is the challenge for these mobility providers? Essentially, when we talk about new services, we're looking at today hybrid fleets. So maybe we say human-driven, the ones that we're talking about, connected vehicles today, and then introducing autonomous vehicles into that. It's going to be that way for quite a long time. That's one aspect. And then the other is, what kind of vehicles are we talking about? If you go on the show floor, you'll see a few electric vehicles, you'll see some prototypes for some autonomous vehicles, but around in Europe and in the United States and in Asia, there's trials going on right now with vehicles, autonomous vehicles. So in the next many years, you've got different brands of vehicles. You have shuttles, you have cars, buses that have to work together. And so that's really the challenge today. If you're going to try and offer some kind of mobility service, how do you manage all of this and this kind of chaotic landscape? The other aspect is if you're talking about buses, for example, fixed route, so maybe starting off with something that's very predefined and set, and traffic is anticipated versus an on-demand door-to-door, which is kind of for some of these ride-hailing companies today what we're expecting, and you can call that up. So that's really the challenge today. If you want to offer mobility service, you have to be thinking about all these things. The other aspect is what we call multimodal. So if you have an existing transportation system, right, you've got the buses and the trains, you spent hundreds of millions of dollars invested in that, and now you have connected vehicles, ride-hailing, and autonomous shuttles and others. There's the challenge of now what we say, like integrating these AV fleets into existing transportations, and what does that mean from a system perspective, an integration perspective, payments, applications, scheduling. What does it mean as a fluid service for the passenger itself? And what's the passenger experience, really? With this in mind, so this is actually an example. This is in Sion in Switzerland. That's just live. We heard a little bit earlier about data intelligence, all of the information coming not only from the vehicles or the cars, but the passengers themselves. If you have applications, you've got profiles and information about where you're going, interacting with infrastructure, and then how are you going to be able, from an autonomous perspective, to integrate this? And then we are looking at shared vehicles to make sure that you're not just one person getting in the vehicle and not alleviating any traffic. Another aspect of this is if you're talking about multimodal with existing transportation, how do you integrate what we call first mile, last mile? So you maybe have shuttles that are meeting the train and integrated into those schedules. And in the previous panel, they were speaking about security, and one of the data points was people were not as concerned about that versus other things. But when they first started offering these integrated solutions into existing transportation that people have been taking for years and years and years, passengers started getting used to that. It wasn't all of a sudden changing and the streets were covered with autonomous vehicles. The challenge is how to integrate that into existing transportation systems. What the landscape is today is really about mixed fleets. This is what we're seeing now and what we'll see for the next many years. Mixing shared and autonomous and human-driven. And then the ability, not just for my company, Best Mile, but for transportation operators, they have to manage different types of vehicles, right? It can't be a closed silo situation. So you need some kind of agnostic platform that's going to be able to integrate into transportation systems, but also manage different types of vehicles or different brands of vehicles. And then be able to manage different types of services, fixed and on-demand, fixed route or dynamic route, pooling, the individual, if we have the robo-taxis involved, and scheduled or on demand. So really what we're looking at here is the ability not for the vehicle, the single vehicle itself, but how it works collectively in an integrated transportation system, and specifically for fleet, because that's the benefits that are going to be brought not just with the connected vehicles, the human-driven vehicles, but even for the AV, is how is it going to be working? And that's what we're trying to think about as over these next several years to address the mobility service providers and the transportation ecosystem. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. There's question. All right, so Lisa, the question that our panel is principally focusing on is what is needed for the deployment of automated mobility services. So, reviewing your presentation, of course, I had a chance to see it before right now a few times. What you're saying is that we need a platform in order to be able to integrate all of these various types of transport modes and different types of organizations, public, private, et cetera. But what's the extent of that? Is that a platform that's going to work in a city? Is it a platform that's going to work in a region? Is it a platform that's going to work in a country? Is it going to work all over the EU? What's the extent of this platform?
There's several things at play. Certainly regulations are one. We talked earlier about in California, it was just passed for the state DMV that there's level 5 now going to be allowed. You don't need to test driver. And it's not a single solution. It's just that it's an open solution. So the success, at least in the next several years, where you're going to have these kind of mixed, either multimodal, multi-service ecosystems, are that you're going to have to be able to work with existing transportation systems. And so even for the OEMs, if they have very specific closed controls, that may work for their specific vehicles, but when you're trying to bring it into a larger ecosystem, that doesn't work anymore. You need an agnostic platform, and you need to be able to integrate into existing transportation systems. So there's a very large French transportation, the largest one provider, and they're trying to incorporate into their trains and other transportation AV. And how are we going to do that? It's integrating into what they have today, not creating from scratch.
But we have a bus system that works in Geneva. That same bus system doesn't work in Lausanne. It doesn't work in Zurich.
But if you have a regional or a national bus provider, then that's a solution. But if you have a single transit agency, it depends on the ecosystem that's created and the providers that are there.
What's the ambition level? Is the ambition level to have this sort of a platform that will be deployed on let's say, the entire United States, or all of North America, or in Los Angeles?
Definitely on a larger scale than a single urban area. So again, the idea is to be able to have a solution or a platform or the ability to have other technology integrated in together. There's not going to be one silver bullet, so to speak, that can be deployed globally. I think that's unrealistic.
Okay. Any questions out there? Panel. Okay.
I'm trying to understand, if you compare it to the hotel world, you can book the same hotel via different channels. You can book it directly, you can book it via booking.com, etc. Could you imagine that the same car from a car-sharing platform is available via different platforms?
No, you certainly can have a global platform for that if it's the same service. But if you have, in that respect, for TNCs, you could have a global platform, and there are some different rules in different countries. But when you're talking about transit agencies, if you're going to work with some of those mobility service providers, that might be slightly different because they have transportation software systems today. But yeah, if you're talking about a TNC or a ride-hailing company that's going into robo-taxis, they could easily have a global solution.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Julian?
Good afternoon. So I'm Julien Masson. I'm part of Orange Business Services. So I promised Mike I'm not going to focus on who is Orange, but what is Orange doing in the field of connected car and autonomous driving. So there was, I guess you've been looking at this morning sessions. I remember a good slide from our friends from Qualcomm, with on one hand PC5 communication, on the other UU with vehicle to network communication. And usually a lot of the industry is looking at telcos, including Orange, like the baddies who we're going to make a lot of money with autonomous driving. We're going to use the core network, and this is the new way to generate a lot of revenues from MNOs. Well, guess what? At Orange, for the moment, we haven't figured out anything about how to make money with autonomous driving with the network itself. Okay, so we're looking at we're doing experiences, and we have looked at 11P. We are looking obviously at cellular V2X. And we're looking at it, from a technical standpoint, a quality standpoint, and also a business standpoint, obviously. And what we need to do now is really to look at both and see how. I'm not talking about 11P and cellular V2X, but PC5 and UU, and how we can really go beyond the first use cases that the whole industry looked at with mostly safety use cases, but what can be realized. So we have, among others, but we're involved in multiple initiatives, 5G car being one of them. Orange joined 5G AA 9 months ago, where a lot is happening. And we have started to cooperate with Ericsson, which is a partner of Orange. And we deployed an experiential network on a test track in France, which involves actually LTE, cellular V2X, and pre-5G components, network components. So the main this slide is highlighting what would be in an ideal world with MNOs who are deploying in a much better way than the network coverage you've seen in the UK this morning. The low latency, service reliability with a 5.9. This is not what you find in any telco SLA today. And in order to be able to enable some of the use cases that you see here, some of them that need to go back into a core network, some of them that just need vehicle-to-vehicle communication. So of course, what we're experiencing here is really, it's a research network, but still we had some good learnings together with Ericsson, and some of those learnings we focused on a few use cases. So one use case that will not be deployed in an industrial way by the car industry is what we call see-through. So the see-through use case is you are driving your car. There is this truck ahead of you. You can't see beyond or through the truck, so you can query the camera on the truck ahead of you to see what's ahead. So when I'm saying OEMs will not deploy that, you don't want to be driving your car, overtaking somebody by using the camera from that truck ahead of you. But from an experiential standpoint, it allows us to see how we can keep a very low latency and how that video stream can be made available to from a vehicle to another. So this is one use case that has been experienced. The other one is an emergency vehicle notification, with the main purpose of today when you're driving in a city or somewhere, you can hear this ambulance or fire brigade nearby your vehicle, and you start to worry. You're like, well, where are they? Shall I go on the side? Well, here the benefit of this use case is really to make sure that this emergency vehicle will only alert the vehicles that need to be alerted, which are on the way of that ambulance or fire brigade. And there was actually a third use case which is not shown here. And because I had to be short, I will soon stop, Mike. But the main learnings we got from that experiment is that with 5G and network slicing, we have the ability to ensure a low latency, obviously, but also a quality of experience, meaning that we will be capable to say, right, this video stream is a higher priority for this safety use case than my kids watching Netflix at the back of the car. And we are capable of enabling that service for you with such quality of service and experience and low latency. Now, this is on a defined area and in perfect conditions, and obviously we will need to we need to deploy that on a larger scale. And we have some next steps with that experiment. Obviously we are involved in 3GPP, and LTE V2V release 14 is coming. The test and the experience that we did, this virtualization of the network, we did that in the core network. Now we need to virtualize also the radio access network, the RAN, to see what are the benefits of doing that. What we're going to do is actually what we've done. We're going to redeploy that infrastructure together with Ericsson on a test site in Montlhéry, in Paris area, which is actually a test site operated by UTAC. And so we are engaging with OEMs, with SoC makers, because we need to go there and experiment and test both PC5 and UU, see how they work together, and try. There's a lot of hope, a lot of hype with 5G network slicing. We want to really experience it and let OEMs try it.
Thanks, Julian. Thank you very much. So, again, I'm opening to the floor for questions to Julian. I think everyone who is going to ask questions has left for the day. So I'm just going to have to ask myself. So, Julian, what I understand you saying is that in order for us to be able to deploy automated mobility services, we need to have a test platform to ensure that the use cases that need to be developed can be deployed safely, securely, and with full knowledge of where the potential problems might be.
Yes, right now I see a lot of my colleagues being very excited with 5G. Not in the typical way of, okay, we move from 2G to 3G, 3G to 4G, and most of the MNOs, including Orange, the main focus was consumer. While with 5G, and I think this is a great step at telcos, 5G is a great opportunity to focus, okay, consumers will benefit from 5G, but businesses, B2B, corporations, business to business, can benefit from 5G and network slicing. So on the paper, theoretically, there are a lot of benefits, But what we are doing, not only on the connected car vertical, on Industry 4.0, smart cities, but we want to test and experience what are the concrete benefits and if the promise can, if we can hold our promise.
Does everyone here know what network slicing is? Is there anyone here who does not know what network slicing is? Everyone knows what network slicing is? No. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Please.
If I try to make it really simple, today we are providing and enabling a telecom pipe, and you will have a number of handsets close to that base station, and the ones who are here, they take the network, and the first serve, first come. Okay. With network slicing, we are virtualizing the core network, you know, all those switches and old technology from 20 years ago. Well, we are virtualizing our networks with servers, software, and so that's for the core network. And the RAN, the radio access network, the base station that you can see, computing capability will be attached to the new base stations coming, and we will be able to, if you have a big telecom pipe, we will be able to slice it in pieces and guarantee service availability into that pipe. Now, this is what all my friends from standardization have been working on, starting from the core network, but we need to experiment. I mean, of course, you have announcements around 5G here and there, but the big promise with 5G and the big possibilities with 5G are really that we, telcos, will be capable of doing much more than talking in a best effort approach. There are still challenges with network coverage. All of those challenges will remain, but we will be able to focus on B2B use cases and come up with talk a language that the car industry is used to.
Question.
Thank you. François Guichard from UNECE. Good that we talk about slicing. I was wondering always if there is a contradiction between this technology and the neutrality of internet.
I think I will pass on that question. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to take
because
that one.
Obviously you can. You can.
I mean, this is a good question. I can tell you that's what we're looking at right now is much more trivial or much more to the ground, and we're just verifying and experiencing and verifying if what seems to be possible with 5G, if we can really deliver and hold that promise. Then there is always a risk. I mean, this is a possibility, but yeah, I mean, I don't see this as a major risk in a shortcoming term.
We have time for one more question. Okay. Thank you, Julian. Marco, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Marco Janschitz. I work for ASFINAG, and ASFINAG is the operator of the high-level road network in Austria. So we operate motorways there. And I'm also working for the association of the tolling industry, I mean the toll motorway operators in Europe, the ASECAP. And maybe before going directly in the topic of my presentation, I want to give some factual information about tolling, just to sort it out. Yeah? Tolling is the mean of the member states, the European member states, to finance infrastructure, to build, plan, finance, and maintain infrastructure. So in Europe, we are levying a toll of about 28 billion euros each year. So this is the income of the member states. For this, we're using a specific technology on 5.8 gigahertz, DSRC called in Europe. And this is it. So if there's anybody who can convince me that we should change this technology, please propose a nice business plan and we can talk about. But coming back to my presentation, I was wondering that I'm the only representative of road operators and road authorities in this symposium on the podium. I was wondering if there's a need to convince anybody that the road operators should play a role
in cooperative systems or connected and autonomous driving.
You don't need to do that.
I hope not. But just to give you an idea what we're currently doing. We're doing traffic. I'm starting from the upper part of this picture. So next to the real physical infrastructure, we have already digital infrastructure. Of course, this varies from road operator to road operator, but this is what my company is doing, namely ASFINAG. So we are doing traffic surveillance, incident management, traffic information, roadworks information, weather information. We are already today in cooperation with car manufacturers. We provided connected vehicle information. And all the measures we are doing along the network, most of us are operating fiber networks next to our physical infrastructure. And of course, we have a big, as far as I know, ASFINAG is the biggest network operator in Austria of a fiber network. So why should this is helpful, obviously, for our customers and for the automotive industry already today. Why should this change with the advent of autonomous vehicles? I don't know, I don't see a reason. So now let's switch to our vision, what we have today and what we might have in the future. On the left picture you see today, what we're dealing today. We have variable message science to convey information to our customers. We have navigation systems. We have spoken radio information. And of course, this will change in the one or the other year. And it is obvious that the crucial question here is the communication question, as we have already discussed the all day long. And it is obvious for us that we can only implement tested and verified technology. So we'll not go for any tests and making experiments when going for large-scale implementation. So I'm not aware if you know about the C-Roads initiative. It's a big European initiative heading for the implementation of cooperative ITS in Europe. It's funded by the European Commission. It has a budget of around 200 million euro, and the implementation of CITS is taking place now. So I can inform you that Austria will go for a tender for CITS this summer. Germany is also preparing. We're in good contact with France. There are already clear signs from France. We have the announcement of Volkswagen. So I think we should not discuss about the technology question. For long range, I think we are on your side. Let's go for cellular. For short range, I think as a matter of fact, as we're going for implementation now, it will be 802.11p. We have tested this technology already for 10 years now. We've tested with automotive industry. We had last 6 test cycles in Austria with 14 OEM and their T1 suppliers, and we will go for it. I don't know how much you are involved in the European initiatives, but as you might know, the European Parliament has also a saying on the CITS and the framework for the conditions CITS should work in. And recently they have drafted an initiative report, which is basically a position of the European Parliament on CITS. I've seen the final draft. I think this will not change dramatically. But what they've put in this policy framework is 2 terms: backwards compatibility. So any new technology which comes into the market needs to be backwards compatible, and they've implemented the second term, interoperability. I think those 2 terms are the framework conditions we have to work with, and I hope anybody doing technology will follow that. So saying that, I think we have done a lot in the last few years. Now it's time to harvest our efforts, to go for real implementation. Still 25,000 lives are killed on our roads. So there's no need to wait for any other new technology which might have more and nicer parameters. But let's go for it now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Marco. So if I can summarize what you've said is, in order from the point of view of the road operators, in order to deploy automated mobility services, we need to have DSRC implemented as soon as possible. Okay. Does anyone have any other opinions or would like to make any points about that? Please.
I may have one question.
are you, I mean, do you have a business plan where you're going to equip every RSU on your, along the road with 11P?
There will not be full coverage, this is obvious. But already today, we act as service provider. We provide apps, we clean our toilets on the rest areas, we put the snow away from the street. So we are service provider anyhow. So if you buy a vignette on our network, it is our occasion to give you a nice service. And if the service is, out of the bundle is to provide you with CITS services, like defined in the CITS platform of the European Commission, then we will do it. Yeah? And the cost, when you compare the cost of building roads and to compare it of equipping with ITS equipment, yeah, this is marginal. This is neglectable.
We have a question back there. Johannes?
Yeah. One question with regard to the infrastructure you are providing, the variable speed signs and so on and so forth. Do you have a plan to provide this information, which is produced by these traffic infrastructure? Do you have a plan to provide this information on a back-end API so that I can receive the same information not on a side-link channel directly at the street, directly at the road, but via a back-end server maybe operated by ASFINAG? With, of course, short latency, maybe 200, 300 milliseconds, but maybe it can gain the same, more or less the same benefit as a side-link technology.
I don't know if you can meet the 200, 300 milliseconds, but at least I can say I think we have it since 5 years. So already now we have service providers, the known one, yeah, like here, Nokia, TomTom, all the others have. We have also in cooperation with some of the OEMs, they're already testing with our data.
Okay, so it's already in the car.
At least we know that the service providers are getting data from us.
Can you say some words about the latency? So what is the latency between change at the variable speed limit up to your backend server and down to a car which receives the same information via a network?
I don't have the information.
Okay, we have another question back here.
Quickly, variable message signs are not harmonized in Europe. They are not harmonized globally either, but definitely in Europe they are not. And at least I'm aware of one country where even within the country, the same message sign may mean different things in different departments. So there is an issue. And for your information, the UNECE Working Party 1, which is the road safety platform, has started to deal with the harmonization of the variable message signs. And the idea is, should they be eliminated because of the technological changes? Doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, they will have to be harmonized. So it is a little bit marketing or advertisement that please bear in mind that is happening. Nonetheless, physical road signs are still around. They are supposed to be harmonized, but they are not fully harmonized. And there is a UNECE project which we started when I was there, and it's about to come to a closure, which developed the software and collected all the images of the physical road signs of countries that are contracting parties to the Vienna conventions, and I think soon it will have to be available publicly on the EC website, so you can see in which country what kind of sign means what they use. Thank you.
Thank you. I know one country, and it's the country that I live in, where the road authority has determined conclusively that they're not going to put roadside units on the roads. So at some point in time, we're going to have to deal with this issue, that there may not be a consistent coverage of roadside units all over Europe, and they certainly won't. They aren't planning to put any in the United States. That's another point. Okay. One last comment on this, Marco.
Yes, but then I want to come back to the two terms, interoperability and backwards compatibility.
Yeah.
So if we manage to have this hybrid approach with different technologies, I think then we are on the safe side.
Yeah, but the car companies are sitting there saying, do we have to put DSRC in? And this is the whole thing with the whole issue with CITS. Do we have to put in DSRC because Austria is going to have roadside units which are based on DSRC? Something for the next issue.
Yeah.
Oh,
Mike,
Russ.
one just quick point. More than 10 years testing is completely absurd in the communications world, and there's been no technology that's ever gone through more than 10 years testing. And I suggest you look at, maybe the problem is that the underlying 802.11p technology is fundamentally flawed.
And I know your comments, and I've heard it already since years now, but I want to say that these 10 years of testing is not about technology testing. It's about agreeing on cooperating, on defining use cases, and prioritizing use cases, and then implementing it. So it's not about technology itself. It's, I don't know who said it in one of the earlier sessions, there was no cooperation until now between the car manufacturer and the road operator until now, yeah? Apart from the tolling. But this is dramatically changing now.
Thank you very much, Marco. Thank you for being very clear about what Austria is going to do. Okay, our next presenter, panelist is Nigel Jeffries. I once gave a presentation at a conference where everyone there was a dedicated user of road tolling, and my presentation was about why road tolls aren't bad. So I understand the position.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Very glad to be here to talk about some of the research that is being carried out by WWRF, Wireless World Research Forum members in the field of connected vehicles. The Wireless World Research Forum, of which I'm the chair, is the global body that brings together academics and industry members to discuss research in mobile communications and try to define a research agenda to take us forward towards the wireless world of the future. I'd like to thank my colleagues, Professor David from Kassel University in Germany and Professor Mohan from UA Little Rock in the States for their contribution to this work, which I'm presenting here. Professor Mohan leads the Connected Vehicles Working Group in WWRF. What I'm talking about is just one of the aspects of connected vehicles that that group is looking at. The question I'd like to raise is whether we're doing enough at the moment to consider the requirements of vulnerable road users in our development of the connected vehicle. For instance, studies have shown that the pedestrians comprise over 20% of road fatalities worldwide, and that's over 250,000 worldwide each year. In analysing these figures, we find that 80% of those fatalities are people who are crossing the road rectangularly, or that is, crossing the road perpendicular to the flow of traffic. And in 30% of these cases, there's some form of obfuscation involved. So that's typically the case where somebody is stepping between parked vehicles at the side of the road and then stepping out into the road. And this prevents drivers getting a clear view of what's going on. So what's to be done in this case? The automotive industry is already considering both passive and active approaches to protecting pedestrians. For instance, in the passive case, there are changes in the design of cars and other vehicles that mean that collisions with pedestrians are less harmful to the pedestrian, examples including impact-absorbing bonnets and external airbags, for instance. And there are also more active technologies involving the use of radar and cameras to detect potential problems ahead. But the disadvantages of these approaches that they are not 100% reliable, being susceptible to weather conditions and so on, and they often only work when the pedestrian is already on the road and clear of any obfuscating obstructions. So here's the sort of typical environment we're talking about, where you have a busy street with parked cars between which a pedestrian is walking. There are numerous other pedestrians walking around as well in the area in different directions, all liable to change direction at short notice. If we assume, as is usually the case, that the pedestrians are carrying active smartphones, then we can use the connecting vehicle technology to detect a problem and alert all the road users, including the pedestrians that are affected. This could use direct mode communications between pedestrians and vehicles, or cellular communications with access to a central server. The implementation of cellular V2X will provide both short-range direct communication and long-range cellular networking. And all, of course, of all these nodes will be based on 3GPP technology. So as well as cloud-based operations, there will also be edge computing, which will enable much faster response to emerging situations. And being 3GPP based, this technology will be, of course, incorporated into smartphones and devices, whereas implementation of competing technologies, such as 802.11p, is unlikely in smartphones. So to summarize, there's an important challenge to the industry in doing more to protect vulnerable road users, including pedestrians. Existing and potential passive and active solutions are not sufficient, but connected vehicle-based solutions could help provide the answer. And emerging 5G technologies with their low latency, high capacity, and facility for direct communications are well placed to support this work. Thank you.
Here's a question.
Gianfranco Burzo, DriveSec. It's not so clear for me how you can distinguish between pedestrian, how you can localize the relative position of the pedestrian with the car in order to understand if the pedestrian is really in the path of the car or not. You need the localization, relative localization of under the meters, something like this.
Good relative localization, I believe. Yes, that's true. That's very important, and that's thank you. Yes, you do need good relative localization, and that's the subject of the research that's going on to determine whether that is achievable using these technologies. I agree, that's very important, and it's a challenge. I think pedestrians are very unpredictable creatures. I think, and identifying where they are and where they're going, what they think they're doing is a challenge.
Of that 20% of road fatalities, how many of those are younger children who may not have a cellular phone and who may need a chip inserted in their backside?
That's a good question. I mean, they are particularly vulnerable road users, and they are not generally, particularly young ones, equipped currently with phones. But people are increasingly looking at supplying younger children with some kind of device, which is not a phone, but maybe a chip that's inserted in them, or a tracking device that's on them so they can be located if they go missing, that kind of thing. So there's potential to use that technology.
I just have a very quick question for the audience. How many of you have pets that you have some form of localization on them? Any of you? Yeah. One? Two? My wife? Yeah. Three? Okay. All right. So this is something that I've got a question here, and then
yeah. Very quick. Very quick. It's working. Okay, great. I wanted to try to help. This can happen, of course, that there are safety systems which are not working in 100% of the cases, but each time we can save a life, we take the chance. So, yeah, okay, maybe some children won't have a cell phone, but if we could save some life, we would take it.
Question over here. Sorry, Darren Hanley from DFT. I think my question's kind of already been asked. It's just, obviously, it's probably the one with kids. It's assuming that people have that. How do you make it work for people who don't want the app, who don't want to have their phone continuously ringing, telling them there's a car somewhere around on the pedestrian side? So you're assuming, I think, with your model, at least some sort of. Oh no, sorry, I have to rephrase this. Are you assuming pedestrians will want to participate in your V2X communications? Same for cyclists, assuming that they would willingly download something and participate, or are you assuming that there will be just the signal off their phone being used?
Yes, I assume that many people will want to be involved, and if many people are, then that's good, because, as you said, it will save some lives. The question whether you use information passively without the consent of the user is one we've got to look at carefully, I think.
Are you saying that you could put it on the watch? Yeah. I thought he was telling me he was going over time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say this is one takeaway for me. I don't know how you feel, but this idea, this whole concept is really gotten to me. So I think this is really an important one. I think we're going to need to go to our next session, our next speaker. Thank you very much, Nigel. Thank you. So, Manuel, please.
So, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Manuel Marcillo, and I'm the general manager of CONEBI. CONEBI is the Confederation of the European Bicycle Industry. We represent not only bicycles, but also pedal assist electric bicycles, and parts and accessories industries in Europe. Please let me say one thing first of all. We're not thinking of putting any chip inside cyclists, so it's out of our scope. I would like first of all to thank very much the UNECE, the ITU for the kind invitation. So we're here today to discuss connected mobility. We're sure that in the mobility context, bicycles and electric bicycles will play a major role. They will be connected, and they will represent an important element of the Internet of Things ecosystem. But from a practical point of view, it is not easy for human drivers to see cyclists on the roads, to predict their movements. And at the same time, bicycles are generally considered the most difficult detection problem that autonomous vehicle systems are currently facing. Just to give you some numbers, only in 2016, almost 20 million bicycles were sold in the European market, out of which over 1.6 million were pedal assist electric bicycles. This is a new trend, and the market for this type of means of transportation is booming, is growing very much. In 2017, more than 2 million units were sold in the EU. So numbers are growing, but not only in the EU, as this is becoming a global trend. Now, what are some of the main trends in cities? This is really important for us. What is the context in which cycling is growing? So we see increased pollution, population growth, expanding urbanization, and increased mobility and pressure on accessibility. But what is the major concern? Let's be honest. Without any doubts, the main concern for the bicycle industry is safety. Indeed, we need to find solutions to make cycling safer. We're basically talking about a multifaceted problem. While some cyclists don't know how they're supposed to behave, and sometimes, unfortunately, they don't want to behave in a safe and respectful way, some drivers don't know how to properly share the road with cyclists. Moreover, infrastructure in many places doesn't facilitate peaceful coexistence on the same roadways between cars and cyclists. Therefore, the bicycle industry has started to work on creating AI-based bicycle-to-vehicle communication systems to help the drivers get alerts. In this slide, you will find an example of cooperation between Trek Bicycle Anton, a tech company based in the US that is coordinating its work with Ford Automotive. From a practical point of view, the pillars sustaining the process of their work are heat map danger zones, such as an AI system to identify the most dangerous situations based on a variety of environmental variables, mainly with data coming from bicycle computers. 2, broadcast positions to get the cyclist location from bicycles and accessories. 3, create alerts by looking for cyclists and vehicles that are at high risk based on location, time, and environmental conditions. And 4th, vehicle notifications, which means providing OEM API access, libraries, reference applications, and radio frequency hardware. At the beginning of this slide, I mentioned the concept of danger zones. Examples of criteria to create danger zones are, for example, the road characteristics and related environmental features, but also the cycling community, who knows what roads are the most dangerous, and previous accident data. To cut the story short, the bicycle industry aims at providing open standards, and software must be accurate and meet existing OEM user experiences and HMI requirements for notifications. So, the main concept of this presentation is that bicycles will definitely have to communicate with the other vehicles as well as with the road infrastructure. This interaction will allow road users and traffic managers to share information and to use it to coordinate their actions. The cooperative element enabled by digital connectivity will significantly improve road safety and traffic efficiency by helping cyclists and the other road users to take the right decision and adapt to the traffic situations. The bicycle industry deems that the proper deployment of harmonized CITS services is key to this objective and agrees that interoperability is a must. It is unacceptable that road users nowadays could die on roads because vehicles cannot communicate with each other due to non-interoperable communication systems. So, deploying the necessary technologies and boosting user uptake requires an appropriate regulatory environment. That is why, in conclusion, CONEBI welcomes the valuable work of the UNECE, of the ITU, but also of the ISO and of all the institutions working on these topics, also at regional level like in Europe, and believes it is of extreme importance for all stakeholders to work together within those organizations. Thank you very much.
So, question.
My question is about the chip you mentioned at the beginning, because it's clear that children probably doesn't have cellular phones, but cyclists can have it, and it should be really an easy way to make them more safer. Why do you exclude something like this? Use cell phone for cyclist safety?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, that was without any doubt a provocation. We don't know what's going to happen in 20 years if we're all going to have chips in our bodies. But to be frank, I think it's a matter of safety, and we will have to find solutions for everybody's safety. So if that means to have, I don't know, a phone or smartwatch or whatever it is to make everybody safe, well, let's see, but that should be the direction that we have to follow.
What about the obvious step of equipping every bicycle that's sold with a telematics unit, with its, just like we're doing with cars?
Good question. So that's only a very short introduction. I had
It was a lot longer. I can guarantee it. and
so
lots
I have
of good
to stick
information.
to my 5 minutes. And actually, if anybody of you would like to have more information on the several projects that the bicycle industry is trying to implement and implementing, please send me an email and we'll give you more information. Now, here there is no slide about, for example, bicycles of the near future. They will have sensors. They will be equipped with accessories that will allow basically cyclists to be detected by car drivers, for example. So it's not a question of, again, putting a chip in people's bodies or to force everybody to have a smartwatch. The main idea is to have bicycles equipped with the necessary equipment in order to be able to be connected with all the vehicles on the infrastructure.
I wonder how well the mapping industry is doing with mapping the bicycle paths. Is that something that's been taken to heart, or is it something that is kind of, anyone know? Anyone want to?
I speak. No, Google.
Okay.
Google is crap. But if you take, I think you mentioned
Google is crap. That's right. Coach you.
If you take, for instance, the crowdsources data of Strava, where cyclists upload their data, Strava is calculating routes and popularity. That's already much better. But it's my private opinion.
Here's a question.
This is more from a cyclist's point of view.
Very good.
One more.
I can see the benefits of cyclists telling vehicle, but the problem usually isn't the cyclist, it's the vehicle driver. Certainly in London, they're unable to not drive in cycle lanes or obey actually the rules of the road. So telling them that there's bicycles on the road actually doesn't improve safety that much. It also needs to have something in the vehicle to actually kind of make drivers or the vehicle drive where they should be. Sorry, that's my cyclist.
Can I reply? Yeah. So thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the question. I think it's a behavioral problem. It goes on both sides. Like I said, it's not just the person driving a car that is not behaving. It's not the cyclist not behaving. Sometimes you see people not behaving by driving their cars. Sometimes you see cyclists shouting to car drivers, even if they're wrong. So it's a behavioral problem. Now, if I think of London, for example, from a cycling point of view, London is becoming a great city. You have cycling highways to go to Westminster, for example. I did it less than 6 months ago, and it was amazing. So you have segregated paths. You can cycle whatever, whenever you want. You have no problems. Car cannot come to your path. So I think it's a question of changing behaviors. It's a matter as well of having more and better infrastructures. And we see that when and where we have more and better infrastructures, we have more sales. That's a trend.
Okay, we're getting close. I think we need to make sure that our last speaker has sufficient amount of time. Please wait. If we can, we'll take that at the end. Philip? I happen to know that Philip is also a cyclist.
I would prefer to speak about cycling, but okay. I have to do my job. We can meet and discuss about cycling after the event. Okay. In case you don't know BIX, maybe just one sentence. BIX, we are an international carrier, telecom company. So for the Swiss people in the room, if you leave Switzerland, it's very likely that you will be on our network to make your phone work abroad. For all the non-Swiss who are in Switzerland, it's very likely that your phone is working thanks to us. That's one of the things we are doing. Now, I'm not speaking about that. I'm trying to explain today why it makes sense for an OEM, car manufacturer, to be an MVNO. I will explain that. And this slide, when I prepared it, it felt like preaching to the choir. Right now, even more. Let me just focus on one point, that if you take the entire evolution, if you look towards the future, and it has been presented on this panel by Huawei, but also it was mentioned several times today. 5G is coming. 5G is not one solution, it's multiple solutions, and will have a dramatic impact on the core network. That's important for what I'm going to present afterwards. And therefore, it's important that car manufacturers or OEMs take the right decision today on their communication architecture, because it will have a huge impact on their flexibility in the future. So now, what's the baseline of my story? It's about control and convenience. But let me start by explaining what I'm talking about. An MVNO is a real telecom operator. The only thing it doesn't have is the radio access network. So you can have a core network, you can have everything, but he leaves the radio access networks to the local Oranges, Deutsche Telekoms, and so on. And he will offer services to customers without a radio network. So in this case, the essence, the heart of a mobile operator is the core network. I think the name says itself. And one important parameter there is more, but is the IMSI. The IMSI is the mobile identity. That mobile identity will allow you to go abroad, to be recognized, etc. Now, the good thing is that you can combine different mobile identities in one SIM or in one car. So, for instance, one SIM could have a local mobile identity, or a car manufacturer could acquire a global mobile identity, an IMSI 901 something, like for satellite networks that are not attached to one country. They could get one from us, but it could also get one in some countries where for regulation or for commercial reasons it's better to have a local IMSI. So there the basic idea is that with the right combination of IMSIs, you can cover the entire world with one SIM card. Now, this is don't worry, this is already my last slide. We see 6 good reasons why a MVNO solution is the better solution for OEMs. First of all, it gives innovation independence. Today, almost all of the day was about innovation. If you want to launch innovative services and you want to do that on a global level, it's great to have your own core network that you control yourself, and you decide yourself when you upgraded it. You do it only once for the entire world, and you can roll out your services. There, I already gave away my second point, is that if you have only one platform, instead of having deals with operators in different countries, you can roll out more easily. Obviously, you will not roll out your new service in all countries at the same time, but you can, the effort is less. And this is maybe the most important one if you think of your bottom line. Very often you will see solutions based on eSIMs. But bear in mind that every eSIM profile corresponds to the core network of one operator. So if you switch the eSIM profile, so the physical SIM stays the same, you switch the profile from one country with the profile of another country, the entire core network integration changes. So think of 5G. Everything you did doesn't work anymore. You have to do it again. And I think it was mentioned several times today, the data ownership. I think even General Motors asked the question, and also this beautiful presentation with the analytics with Singapore, for instance. To be able to show that, you need the data. If you are a mobile operator yourself, you have the data. All the data of all your users are on your platform, the location. So you have full control of data. You don't have to negotiate with other parties to obtain those data. Security, another topic of the day where I can only add my small piece. If you are an MVNO, you get all the data unfiltered from the network. So you see the signaling. You see exactly what's coming out of the device. You have full control. And also, I think there was a beautiful slide about security with red, green, and blue. You can set policies. And obviously, for telematics, you will be very strict. You will only allow certain protocols, certain traffic. For the hotspot in the car, there you don't care whether they go on Netflix, on Facebook, or whatever. So there, since you are in control, you set the policies yourself, you have full control. And the last point already, since you have control, you combine different mobile entities or IMSIs, you can, in each country, assure that you have the best coverage. If in one country you're happy with operator 1, but it turns out that maybe in some parts of the network, in some parts of the country, that operator doesn't have a great coverage, no problem. You add a third or second or third operator, and you achieve the full footprint. So just to conclude, the main argument, to summarize in one sentence, the advantage of an MVNO solution is that it gives a OEM full control. At the same time, the complexity is very low because the real complexity, the technical complexity, is handled by experts such as us. Thank you very much, and I'll leave just the last slide so that you know something about it.
Thank you, Philippe. We have a question at the back. And then we have a question right here, will not be denied.
Yeah, thank you very much for this interesting presentation. I have a question for, as a MVNO, how do you guarantee a quality of service that you would need to supply autonomous driving?
There, as a carrier, we handle roughly 20% of the roaming traffic worldwide. So there, we sit directly on the signaling. We are directly connected into the operators. We've got an excellent view on the quality. That's one. Secondly, if you want the best quality, the best guarantee is to have multiple networks in one country. The best operator, all the premium operators here on the table, they are never the best in the whole country, and they can never guarantee that they have 100% availability. So if I were to build a solution, I would love to have an access to all networks available.
Okay.
Just one comment on this last point. I mean, you are making some interesting points for the car industry. That last point you make is not valid anymore. I mean, pure player, traditional MNOs are working on a 901 basis for IoT and machine-to-machine, and so there are no white zone, and we roam with an orange SIM card on the network of our competitors in those countries.
Thank you. I fully agree. As an engineer, I will not contradict, but at the same time, your argument validates that we use the same technology. We are both roaming. So the essence of the solution is roaming. And we as a carrier, this is what the company has been doing since roaming for data was launched. So there, we can guarantee the best SLA that's available on the market. And of course,
this is a subject of a maybe a 1.5 to 2 day panel discussion on just this, because we're going to get to your question. But the main question that I always have when I hear this is, why haven't we done it yet? I mean, I've been working on this personally working on this in China, North America, Europe, and Russia, and the MVNO solution just never came up to being the one that was selected. So we haven't done it yet.
It's a very interesting and difficult question. Definitely one of the reasons it has been said, I think, when you received the question about slicing. When I started in mobile was in 1999. I got a training in Siemens. Siemens left the industry in the meantime. And there, in the lab, they showed you each function, HLR, was a component in the rack. I don't remember the price. It must have been extremely expensive. Now, all these functions are applications that are in private or public clouds and are very scalable. So there is technical solutions that were not available 5, 10, 20 years ago. So we're still talking about an HLR. Of course, for 4G, it's an HSS. But the technical solution is totally different. This allows this global deployment that we didn't, would have been extremely expensive 10 years ago.
Okay, we have a question. Please.
My question was triggered by the remark of the previous speaker about behavior in the interaction between bicycle riders and car drivers. So actually, the question is more for all speakers of today. There's a lot of discussions about technology, what's happening with technology, how can we make technology successful. Human behavior has not been touched actually today. where we know as good as the technology can be, human beings can always be better and smarter than not make the technology successful by sabotaging it, by manipulating it, by not accepting it. So there's a lot of companies, organizations, universities, UN agencies working on the technical solutions. So who's working on the human part to make the technology successful?
No, it's okay. Yeah, it was a question for the panel. That's why I asked. Very good question. Not easy to reply to, actually. I think that there is the need to create more awareness among, for example, in our case, in cycling communities, about how cyclists should behave. So it's the local community. And I think, for example, that if we cycle more, we are more in the cycling community, so we are more in the local community. So if we have a critical mass to cycle more, we will have mistakes. But I'm pretty sure you will also have a lot of people saying, hey, you, what are you doing? Come on, stop. This is not correct. So I think it's something that we have to develop, but it's not going to be easy at all. But I think that there is a lot of work to be done. Another point of view, yeah.
Just wanted to say happily that we do, at UNECE, we do work on behaviors. Today, of course, we talk about technology. We have other working parties at UNECE talking about behaviors, road traffic, etc. If we concentrate today on the technology, it's because we cannot format human beings. They will do always mistakes, etc. And that's the reason why we try with the technology to address these situations where the human being is not performing.
But I'm sure that in car companies and so on, they also have people looking at that part. I cannot imagine that there's only engineers looking at technology. I remember roughly 10 years ago, there was the industry wanted to convince us to launch special handsets and build a special network for mobile TV. We had a research project in Flanders, and as an engineer, I found the engineering part very boring because coverage, as an operator, we know how it works, and we learned nothing new. But indeed, we had sociologists who did that part and who really tested usage and acceptance, etc. So I can only recommend that indeed in such research projects, even if 90% is hardcore technology engineering, that you also have some budget for sociologists who look at, let's say, the human interface, human behavior, etc.
I think we have a last word from Lisa before we close up our session.
So those that are providing mobility services are very interested in their current customers, passengers, travelers today. And there's perception, and then there's reality. So there's perception through media about safety and things like that. So some examples could be like in Switzerland, Postbus, they were very concerned about the passengers and what it would be, let's say, for autonomous vehicles or combined. And they did research and studies about this. And then there was a kind of low-level acceptance and issues of safety, privacy, things like that. And then the service was integrated into the transportation system, and they tested again after, and it slowly adapted. But part of it is who is providing the service and how you integrate that and how you're able to communicate that to the public. The other part is media, because some of it is just fear and not having had that experience. So it's those that are providing the services, I think, that ultimately have to be working closely with the public.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, thank you very much to the panel. I think most people feel that they could go on forever, but we know that we have to, all good things do come to an end. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, the last panel of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to use this opportunity for closing the day. The day was full of interesting discussions. We started with the road safety potential of connected and automated vehicles. We have seen latest available technology of driver assistance systems like the General Motors Super Cruise system. We have been updated on the G5 system, which is there or close to be there. Also, the security threat that is still there has been clearly shown in the Tesla case, and also on the latest update of the work on the Task Force on Cybersecurity and over-the-air software update. We had an interesting presentation. The potential of connectivity for the infrastructure, and finally on vulnerable road users, on their safety and the safety of bicycle riders. I also would like to thank the collaborative efforts of ITU and UNECE, and I would like to give a hand to Anna Maria. Stefano, Fred for the communications, and Francois from UNECE, and many others that are working in the back to make this event happening. I would also like to thank the program committee, speakers, moderators, Expo, of course, our sponsors, who would not have let us survive without them through the day. Specific thanks to DECRA, Qualcomm, and Green Hills. And finally, many great thanks to you participants.
Thank you very much, Walter. My thanks to the UNECE. So on behalf of my deputy, I'm a director of this TSV. I have an honor to close. This is our way of working. My feeling is this. We are now talking about this vehicle industry, talking about 5G. Telcos talking about vehicle or OEMs. A couple of years ago, our discussion was a little bit high level. We don't know each other. We are just looks like imagine of this elephant. But today, my feeling is we know each other more handful, more details. Even we have a new newcomers. Let me say newcomers, partially our new stakeholders like MVNO. We have a good presentation from the MVNO. Even bicycle, e-bike communities. I remember myself as I was in the CES this January. There is another pedestrian we have to take into account. Some of the electronic supported pedestrian mobility. Someone developed one of shoes related electronic supported shoes as a maximum speed 10 miles. 10 miles per hour. It's another high-speed movement. So now we are in this situation, but anyhow, today we recognize that this is great. We are very close now. So all these discussions will be realized very soon. So my feeling is, looks like today, as ITU, as you know, this International Telecommunication Union, but as I want to say it, today, just only today is my feeling is Intelligent Telematics Union. So this is my feeling now today. So I wish we will continue for your information as tomorrow we will have from 9:30 in the morning. We have ITS communications collaboration works of the standard areas in ITU. We will continue this, so everyone is invited. So if you want to visit ITU, 9:30 in the morning tomorrow. And the next event of the Future Network Car 2019, as usual, we will again have a first public day. That will be a great opportunity. And another one, This September 6th to 7th, ITU plan to organize very similar event with the China Ministry of Transport. We have similar workshops in China, Nanjing. So I also invite you to join with us. Having said that, so really great day. I want to see you, all of you, next year. Also, thank you very much for all your participation. Thank you. Well done.